Yeah, hi there everybody, and my name is Michael Buckoff. I am the founder, owner, and the materials writer for all of your lessons at the 7-Step System to Pass a TOEFL IBT. I'm also an instructor and English composition professor here at California State University, San Bernardino. And today, I have a student with me. We have cross pass for winter quarter 2016, and his name is Shrikants.
Hi.
Yeah, nice to meet you. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. Shrikants took the TOEFL test a while back. He got 108 out of 120. So his subtotal scores 28 points in the reading. He got 26 points in the listening, 28 points in the speaking, and 26 points in the writing. So congratulations on your score.
Thank you.
Very good score. And during our interview today, I want to look at just a few things about his background. I want us to try to understand what he had to do in order to improve his English skills to the point where he could score over 100. I know that there's many people out there watching this video. You also want to score over 100. Maybe you need English for professional, maybe academic purposes. You might be trying to get a job here in the United States as a pharmacist, maybe a physical therapist, maybe a doctor. But whatever the case, you need to get a high score. So it's important to understand what's involved in achieving that high score. So in the video, I will be looking in a few areas. First of all, I will be looking at his background. He's going to tell us a little bit about what he did before he started to prepare for the TOEFL, what kind of exposure he had to the English language. That's the first thing I want to look at. Now, the second area of the interview, I want to take a look at what he did 1 year to 6 months before taking the exam, so we can kind of understand the kinds of steps that he had to take to prepare himself to get this high score. Now, also in the video, I'd like to look at some of the things that he did right before the TOEFL exam, a few weeks before the test. And finally, during the video, I'm going to ask him for some tips, maybe some strategies that students may follow when they're taking the TOEFL exam. So hopefully, as you guys are watching this video, you'll get some good ideas on how you can effectively prepare for this TOEFL exam. So first of all, Shrikants, motivation is important. Motivation is important in terms of learning a language. And my first question is, why do you think you were so motivated to learn English and to get such a high TOEFL score in the first place?
Okay. Before speaking about my motivation, I just want to introduce myself. I come from a dental background. I'm a dentist in India, and I graduated in 2011. And my plans were to do Doctor of Dental Surgery in United States, and for that I needed a TOEFL score above 100. And before getting 108, I did take an attempt in TOEFL, and I got 99. That's pretty much a less score for me. So again, I tried that again after 3 months, and I made it to 108.
Wow!
So,
congratulations. So he went from 99 points on the TOEFL exam to 108 over a period of 3 weeks. Okay, cool.
And the motivation part, the most important motivation is self-motivation. Like, you need to motivate yourself, because no one around is free enough to motivate you or anything. But you can check the success stories of people who have done it. Yeah, I have did. And before getting into the exam and preparing for the exam, I did my research for around a month.
Okay, let me just ask one question here. So, before we get too much into what you did before the test. Okay, let's say that I want to look at your life here over the last few years. let's go back maybe pre 2011, maybe 2010, 2009, 2008. My question here is, what type of exposure, Shrikant, did you have with English, and for approximately how long have you been having contact with the English language?
English was my third language in school, and I was pretty much bad at English when I came out of my high school. When I
Okay.
came out of when I was doing my bachelor's, I was pretty much bad in English.
Okay, so let's
Yeah.
say your exposure, would you say that your exposure with English was at school only, or did you have practice with English at home? For example, did you watch TV? Did you
Yeah.
listen to the radio? Did you read newspapers, anything like that?
Yeah, I was used to reading newspapers, and I used to watch a lot of English movies. And
Okay, well, let's stay with that idea. So, approximately how much time do you think you spent reading newspapers and watching English movies? For how long did you do that?
I'm pretty much a news enthusiast, so I used to read that for around 30 to 45 minutes daily.
Okay.
That's my daily habit.
All right.
And every night I used to watch at least one movie,
Wow.
and watching, not just watching the movie, I used to watch movies with subtitles so that
Mhm.
I can understand the language.
Okay.
And that was really helpful to improve my English.
And did you do this for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 months, a few years?
No, it was over a period of 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
And by the time I graduated from my bachelor's, I was not as good as I am now, but
Mhm.
yeah, my language improved a lot.
Okay. Tell me about your undergraduate study or bachelor's degree, your classes. Were they in English or were they in your first language?
Yeah, since my home place is India, and pretty much they we had classes that had a mixture of both English and my home language.
Okay.
So
And
I
what
didn't
is your
need-
home language?
It's
Hindi?
Telugu.
Okay.
Telugu.
Yeah.
It's a regional language,
Okay.
and pretty much almost all my classes were in Telugu. So
Okay.
there was no much help from them in my English.
Okay.
And the only part where I had English was when I used to read my books
Okay.
and
So
newspapers. And
were your textbooks in English?
yes.
They were. Okay.
Yes.
So during your undergraduate study, you did have a lot of contact with academic reading. You're able to read a lot of things in English.
Yes.
And as Shrikant said, he did spend a period of 3 or 4 years, in which case he was reading maybe newspapers on a regular basis for maybe 35 or 40 minutes. And he was also spending some time at night watching movies in English, even as he said, using the closed caption. So, all right, cool. So we can kind of get a big picture there. Okay, now we have some background information. We can understand kind of where he's coming from. And I hope that you guys can see that English, in order to get that high TOEFL score, you need to have some extended exposure with the language. It's not just 1 or 2 weeks. It typically involves a few years of having contact with the language. Okay, now let's move on to your first score of 99, right? And then you, a few weeks later, you retook the TOEFL test, and then you got 108. So my question is, what kind of advice would you give students? And I want to look at it in several areas here. And we'll start with vocabulary first. What kind of advice do you have for students who are preparing for the TOEFL exam, maybe 1 year to 6 months before they take the exam? What are some things that you think students can do or could do to improve their vocabulary?
I would advise, of my personal experience, I would advise that please keep on reading newspapers, books, whatever you get in your hand, and watch as many movies as you can, of course with subtitles. I mean, not just for the drama or the sake of the movies, but just to understand the English, get the accent correct. And yes,
No,
all
I'm
this
asking now. Let's focus on just this one area here. Do you recommend, should they use any vocabulary lists or just improve the vocabulary through reading?
Oh yeah, I used to follow dictionary.
Okay.
Yeah, and since I tried to attend some classes, I got some vocabulary list, and yeah, I did not skip even a single vocabulary or anything what they said, and yeah, they were helpful.
Okay. So how did you study the vocabulary words? Did you read the list? Did you write them in practice sentences?
Yeah.
Did you put them on note cards? Exactly what was your own process
Yeah.
for your vocabulary study?
Just reading the vocabulary wasn't helpful, so I used to make up my own sentences and check with my professor right back at home that whether the sentences were correct or wrong.
Okay.
And it doesn't take much time, but that will be real. That was really helpful for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I owe them a lot.
Okay. All right, let's go to our second area. So 1 year to 6 months before taking the exam, what do you think students should do to improve their pronunciation?
Yeah, the pronunciation, which I was pretty much bad at it in the beginning. Yeah, just when you read a passage or sentence, you'll know that which areas you're wrong, and when you're reading something, just try to record your own voice, own passages, and listen back to it. So then you can make out the difference in how the other people pronounce it and how you pronounce it, and just keep on repeating that word few times, and yeah, that will be really helpful.
Yeah, and Shrikant, I always tell my students when I'm teaching them online that you have to get used to recording your voice. A lot of people aren't used to that. And then they register, they pay $200 to take the TOEFL, and all of a sudden the computer is asking them to record their voice. They're not very comfortable doing it. They end up speaking in a very monotone voice, and it's hard for them. So what he's saying is important. I agree 100% with this. You have to get used to recording your own voice, listening to it. As you listen to it, you can critique. You can focus on how clearly you're pronouncing the vowels, the consonant sounds. You can look at whether or not you're pronouncing correctly the syllables and the grammatical word endings in the words. You can pay attention to what's called your word stress, your sentence rhythm, even your intonation. And you can also pay attention as you're recording to what's called your thought groups and blending, making sure that you're pausing appropriately. Every 4 or 5 stressed words, you have a pause. Then you have another 4 or 5 stressed words, another pause. So it's important. And I think also by watching those movies, I think had a positive impact on your pronunciation. And you said you like to use the caption, am I right?
Yeah.
So how did that help you, do you think?
Since many of the movies, since I'm from India, I have an Indian accent, and all the Hollywood movies, they have their own accent. So I never used to understand some of the words, like I appreciate it. That's what they say here. But in India, we say it like I appreciate it. But I never used to understand some of the words like those. So I used to look at the caption. Okay, that's how they say it. And then I tried to record myself, make some sentences on those words, speak it out, record it, and I just made sure that over a period of time I got that accent so that it would be helpful.
Okay, cool. All right, let's go to our next area here. So 1 year to about 6 months before taking the exam, what do you think students can do to improve their grammar? And the reason I ask this is the TOEFL IBT has no grammar section, but we all know that when you're doing speaking tasks, those 6 speaking tasks, the IBT human raters, they will be evaluating your grammar within the context of your speaking. In addition, as you complete those independent and integrated writing tasks, the IBT human raters will also be evaluating your grammar within the writing context. So grammar becomes important in terms of the speaking and writing. So what advice would you give students in terms of their grammar?
Yeah, grammar is pretty much important for the exam because fact that I scored 99 in my first test and 108 in my second test is just I got the less score in the first one because I made some mistakes in grammar, and yeah, by the end of the exam, when I was re-evaluating due to lack of time, I did not manage my time properly, and that is another part. I could see that I did not I did a lot of mistakes in my grammar, and the next 4 weeks I worked on my grammar part too, and then I was able to score 108. So grammar is pretty much important. I would like to advise that.
Now here's a quick question. So how did you personally, how do you get more aware of what your grammar problems are, and how do you correct those?
When I used to write some passages or when I used to do some reading or anything, I used to cross-check with my professor back home, like, so please tell me what all mistakes do I have in this passage or anything. So he used to just point out, and I used to ask him to explain them, like why this can be and why this can be.
Okay, so he got some feedback from his professor in terms of your writing, so you're able to improve some of your grammar competency. Now we also know that Shrikants was doing a lot of reading practice, and reading practice is also good because it kind of shows you how to say things, how to create sentences, how to put words together, how to use verb tenses, punctuation, all of those kinds of things. Okay, so I think we have a pretty good idea here, but let's just hit it quickly. So in terms of 6 months to maybe 1 year before taking the exam, what kind of advice would you give students that would help them improve their reading?
The only advice I would like to give is just read whatever you get your hands on. May it be newspaper, novels, any kind of books, your academic books or whatever it is. Just keep on reading. There is nothing like a bad book. So when you're interested to improve your language, just read any book you get your hands on.
Now here's my question here. A lot of students will ask this. So what do you do, Shrikant, when you're reading and you see a vocabulary word you don't know? How do you handle that?
So previously I used to follow dictionary, but like when I started following it and I felt like, yeah, that's not a good idea to follow a dictionary. Then I used to used to Google the word to understand the meaning and all. Yeah, Google is pretty much helpful, but knowing the word, and it's better to ask people to explain about it, which is pretty good, and it will have an impact on you, and you will remember the word for a longer time.
Okay,
so
you got feedback, you talked to other people. So when you're doing your reading for say 30 or 45 minutes, as you're doing that reading practice, did you stop every time you saw a word you don't know, or?
Yeah, I used to have my pencil in my hand, and I used to just underline the sentence or the word which I never used to understand, which I never got it or never heard of, or which I did not understand, and I used to just write down those sentences. And when I went to some English classes or someone I know is better in English than me, I used to ask them, just what is this sentence, or what does this word mean, something like that. It's never be embarrassed to ask anyone. It's for your own good.
That's what we kind of call an active learner engages. Like what Shrikant is saying, if you have questions, don't be afraid to talk to people, try to get information. That's all part of trying to master the language, but you have to be active and you can't be shy. You want to try to interact with people as much as you can. All right, let's go to our next idea. So let's focus on this again. So 1 year to 6 months before the exam, what do you think students can do to improve their listening? We know that the TOEFL has a listening section, but there's also listening passages on the speaking and the writing. And similarly, there's reading passages during the reading, and also during the speaking, and also during the writing sections. So what can students do you think is going to make their ears faster, is going to help them improve their listening comprehension?
Frankly, I was not good at listening in the beginning too, because I used to just listen and try to write down the passage, and I used to get it all wrong. And slowly I started listening to the classes, and yeah, making down the while you are listening, taking down the points is important.
Yeah,
But
let's hit
as-
on that. So let me ask you a question. So in your opinion, why do you think it's important to take notes on the listening passages?
Yeah, it is very important to take down notes while you're listening, because you can't remember everything what you listen, because the conversation is long. And it's good to write down notes, because once you listen to all the points, some of the points you may skip, but when you write them down, you don't tend to miss anything. And it's a good thing, like you may get the conversation everything correct, but that may not be in order. Or when you answer some questions, due to it may get jumbled up, and you may not know what is right answer for this question or what is right answer for that question. But when you write down the points in a sequence, in an order, you tend to remember everything from the conversation, and yeah, it helps you to answer correctly.
And that's kind of important too. And now a lot of you guys out there might be watching this. You might say, "Well, Michael, my notes are terrible." I'm going to say it's okay. You have to start somewhere. So even when you're doing reading and listening practice, if you practice now on getting down the main and the most important supporting points of the reading and listening passages, even though today your notes may not be complete, they may not be accurate, if you stick with it, if you keep doing it over a few months, your notes will be more and more complete. They will be more and more accurate. But the key is, like he's saying here, you have to get used to jotting down the notes on the listening passages that you're listening to. You'll get better in time. So don't get frustrated if you feel like you can't understand everything right away. It's all process. It's kind of like they say Rome was not built in a day, right? You know, you have to kind of work and start where you are and then improve from there. Remember when he took the TOEFL the first time, he got 99. Did he give up? No. Then he fought more, he studied more, he practiced more, and eventually he reached his goal over 100 by getting 108. Now the next two areas are important. A lot of you guys out there, you want to get 26 out of 30 on the speaking. You want to get over 24 points in the writing. This can be a requirement for many professional type programs. So here's my question. So in terms of speaking, not just right before the test, but maybe 1 year to 6 months before, what do you think students can do to improve their speaking abilities?
Speaking, I can say that speaking is a bit stronger part of me than reading, listening, and writing, because when I started speaking English, I used to speak with everyone, even at home. I was used to speak my home language with everyone in my family and everything. But from 1 year before the exam, yeah, I started speaking in English with pretty much everyone. Of course.
Really? Even your family members?
Oh yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, they too improved along with me in speaking English and all. Yeah, speaking is just not recording your voice and listening to your voice, but you should try to speak with others, because who knows, the other people might be able to correct any mistakes in your speaking, and that will be pretty much helpful. So try to speak with all the people around you in English, and and that will definitely help you improve your language.
And one thing you guys might consider, in certain countries, if it's a big city, if you live near a big city, there's a possibility here. There is an organization called Toastmasters. It's toastmasters.org. And this particular organization it's like an international organization in which you can improve your speaking. And certain cities around the world, you can actually join Toastmasters and you can actually practice your speaking kind of on a regular basis. So again, if you go on the internet, go to toastmasters.org, TOASTMASTERS.org, toastmasters.org. You ever heard of it?
I don't know.
No, don't worry about it. But it is an organization that you can go to. Okay, so we have some speaking ideas. You remember what he said? He even practiced speaking with his family members. So he spent a lot of time speaking the language, speaking English, 1 year to 6 months before he took the TOEFL exam. Because it's about fluency, right?
Great.
And like he said, you can't just, it's not just recording your voice. Recording your voice is good, and that's a good step. But in addition to that, Shrikants is recommending that you guys also speak English on a regular basis. We have a saying in American culture. It says, practice makes perfect. The more you practice, the better control you're going to have in 3 areas. You will be able to better control your pronunciation, you have better control of your vocabulary and your grammar, and you have better control on how you organize and develop your ideas. And guess what? As you talk with people, your ears are going to get faster. So you can improve your listening comprehension as you interact with people. But you got to make the decision. You got to say, okay, if I'm serious about my speaking skills, I'm going to have to start practicing now. Okay, finally, our next step here is, what do you think students can do, maybe 1 year to 6 months, to improve their writing proficiencies? What are your recommendations for that? What did you do, for example?
I want to tell something about writing here, because that is my weakest part. But on practicing it daily, I was able to score 26 in my final exam. The main problem I had with my writing is I was very bad at spellings. Like I'm very bad at it even now. But after writing some passages and everything, and or in laptop, I used to do it in Word document just to check, spell check, and